Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name's Tom Scott. I'm the product manager for CreateTeam at Modality Systems, and I'll be taking the webinar today to talk you through what CreateTeam is, what some of the key features are for it, and how it can be worked in as part of your team's deployment to help ensure that you're optimizing your security and governance policies, but also keeping control of your team's deployment and empowering people to create teams themselves, but enforcing that level of control at that creation stage that that you can't do natively within Teams. So just before kicking off, there will be a recording of this webinar sent around following the call, and if there are any questions, then please post them. We'll collect those, and then I'll reserve time at the end to tackle them then. If we run out of time, I'll come back to you directly. But yes, any questions, feel free to post, and we'll tackle them at the end as we once we've finished the slides and the call today. So before talking about CreateTeam, I just want to set the scene in terms of the team's lifecycle management at Modality. When we talk about lifecycle management within Teams, we're talking about everything from the time a team is created, through its use, and then until it's archived. And the idea is that things are created correctly. Then throughout the life cycle of the team, we monitor and we can visualize the usage of that team to make sure everything's compliant. You're getting the best use of teams, people are collaborating in the right way. And also when it comes to the archiving of that team, we can make sure that that it's kept in the correct way, and that it's not just deleted, it's archived, and people are aware of the difference and how all that is managed. The reason for this is very simple, is to really avoid sprawl within teams and to make sure that you're getting the most out of your team's deployment. For CreateTeam is a module within Teamwork Analytics. So Teamwork Analytics is our suite of applications that manage the team's lifecycle. CreateTeam is a module within that, and it focuses specifically on the creation element of the team. So that's the bit that we'll be looking at today in terms of when a user wants to go and create a new team, they use CreateTeam to do that, as opposed to the two options that you have with Teams natively, which is to just go and create a team yourself, and you can create any team that you want and it just gets created. Or the other option is where you lock all that down, and then to request a team, or for people to get a team, they have to log a ticket with IT or whoever you've set as the team's approver to go and then certify that that's okay. And then once they've certified that's okay, create that team on the user's behalf. So without further ado, CreateTeam is a Teams application that we've built that automates the creation of teams in Microsoft Teams, and it gives a chance for people to for people controlling a Teams deployment to validate Teams creation before they're actually made. We've built it. It sits as a native Teams application, so you roll it out across your team, your Office 365 deployment to Teams users, and it appears and it sits as a application within Teams, and you can pin this to the sidebar within Teams, so it's the icon is always there for people to refer to. So to create, and this is the form that that people see when they log into CreateTeam. So they've got three options really, and these are all features that can be turned on or turned off depending on how you want to configure this. So you can set it so that somebody creates a custom team, and in CreateTeam language, we say a custom team is just your own team. It's got no settings or predefined templates or anything that sits behind it. It's just you're creating a new team, a blank canvas to work with. We've mirrored the the Teams functionality where you can create a team based on an existing team, so you can have a predefined list of all your teams that you're a member of, and you can create a new team that will use that structure. so like the native team, but we apply our validation to it. And a feature we're working on, which will be released in the next couple of weeks, is creating a team based on templates, which I'll come on to a bit later in the call. But the idea of this is that you can predefine all the structure, settings, and really security elements of that team. And then you can roll those templates out to people based on their job role. So the idea being you can restrict your team's deployment and your creating of new teams so that people can only create teams using one of the templates that you've assigned to them, if that's a way that you want to lock that down. And when we talk about governance and security, it's a way of ensuring that however people create teams, your policies are enforced in there. So where this sits within the usual Teams functionality is that I mentioned before that the native Teams creation for users is either on or off. I've heard it referred as the Wild West sometimes, where you give everybody the ability to create a team. They can just go and create as many teams as they want, and then they can keep working, and there's no input or control from IT or any governance element in that. Or you lock everything down, you shut it down completely, and have everybody request a team so that they have to log a ticket with IT. And what we're shooting for here is a halfway house to try to apply some of that governance, but at the creation point. So keeping that self-service element for users so that they use teams, they feel empowered to go and create them, but in the same breath, giving the necessary controls and governance that people would like to apply to that to stop it getting out of hand and to stop it sprawling. So within CreateTeam, I think we've touched on a couple of those there in terms of defining. You can define your own best practice policies and how you want teams to be validated. You can define the standard team structures for them using templates, and that's a feature that's going to drop in the next couple of weeks. You can control external access. So again, one of the big concerns I'll talk about was around guest access into teams. So it gives you the ability to control who those teams are, who can create those teams. And again, when looking at the sprawl and the self-service nature of this, we use CreateTeam to reduce any duplicate and unnecessary teams that are created, and also minimize the number of teams that need to be approved by IT, if that's a model that you guys are going down. So just before coming on to the features, there's really three elements of CreateTeam that we work through. And again, this is the idea of trying to give a halfway house between the two, the either all on or all off models that you get out the box within Teams. So the idea that people can, when creating it, you're flexible enough that you can give people either you can give them lockdown templates specifically so they can only create teams on this, or it gives you the ability to create or just have custom teams developed. So amongst the creation side, but however you have that set up, it's the automation element within this that we use. So CreateTeam uses Microsoft Graph to automatically create the team once all of our validation has been applied. So from the user point of view, they fill out the form and they click create, and then we do all of the rest within Graph. So from a user experience point of view, it's a really powerful tool and a really simple and easy to teach people to use. And it's the same for any kind of approval process for that as well. We still use Graph for that. It's just introducing an approval step in the workflow. And then finally, around we give control to people. So you're empowering people to create teams, but you're trying to minimize that risk. So to avoid that locking it down and then the challenges you get then with adoption on that. People maybe don't use Teams as they should, reverting to group chat, all of the usual problems that come with it. And what we're hoping for is that with CreateTeam, this gives you a standardized approach to using Teams. Again, the whole standardized element is keen with this. So standardized is easier to manage and control. So it's really keeping that self-service flexibility whilst obtaining that standardized approach within Teams creation is where we see CreateTeam fitting and adding value as part of that creation stage of the Teams lifecycle. And finally, this is then an example workflow within CreateTeam. So without getting into the technical weeds of this, we've got technical documentation online that covers a lot of this. But this is one model. We offer CreateTeam in two models where we either host the service or it can be all installed in your Office 365 tenant. The functionality doesn't change, the licensing and cost doesn't change. It doesn't make any difference to us really. It's just how you want to consume the service based on your InfoSec policies and your data privacy policies. But ultimately, both models use the Graph API to create the team. So what happens is the user will log into CreateTeam, they'll complete the form, giving all the details of the team that they'd like to create. If all of those details match our validation rule, the Create Team button is enabled. When they click that, CreateTeam goes off to Graph, it creates the team, and then it appears for them to start working with. So just a bit of background to CreateTeam and a bit of a scene set there. So I just want to talk now about some of and show you some of the features within CreateTeam that that we use to deliver the governance and security element of this. So this is the CreateTeam validation form. And this is the basic form, whether you're using Teams templates or you're creating teams based on a previous team or just creating a brand new blank canvas team, as referred to earlier. What we do is we've introduced a traffic light system where if a box is red, it means that you need to complete it. You can't submit it for approval, or you can't create the team with that team being blank. And then you can control in CreateTeam. You can create the number of characters, so the minimum and maximum team name length. The same for the description. You can set whether it would be a public or private team, and as part of the validation as well, you can also have specify a minimum number of owners and members within the team. So at Modality, our best practice is that we have 2 owners, because if someone is on leave or someone leaves the firm who is an owner of the team, there's someone in place then to be able to continue the management of that team and the auditing and any admin that's required with it. When you enter your team name at the top, then you will get CreateTeam will go and search all the existing teams in your tenant, and it will display, based on an algorithm, similar sounding team names to the team that you want to create. So as a rule, we do not allow any teams to be created if there's a team with exactly the same name. So we do that check, but we also do a check designed to show people really that if they're searching for a team on a customer, for example, if a team is already created that has that customer name in the title, they can see that, and then they can go and inquire, well, shall I just join that team rather than create my own one? One of the things to confirm with that search is that we only search for public and private teams that have been set to discoverable. If a team has been set to private and hidden, we don't search it for obvious security reasons, because it's not meant to be found unless someone is being invited into that team. And then along the side here, we present options to the user to show, well, if they're a member of that team already, we say that they've joined it. If it is a public team where anybody can go and join the team, then we give them a URL to go and join it. And if it's a private team, then that's what the padlock icon represents here, and they can then go and request access to that team through the usual mechanisms. But it's designed as a way, as well as reducing unnecessary teams, of suggesting teams that exist that might fit the purpose that the person is trying to create the team for. So that would be the full team, so that once the whole form is populated, then the submit for authorization or the create button will be enabled based on the workflow that that's been decided for your tenant. So in terms of the two workflows, there's 3 workflows available within CreateTeam. So just to confirm, workflows are what happens to actually build the team, whether it's created immediately as soon as the user completes the form, or it needs to be approved by somebody who will then approve it before it gets created. So there are 3 that we deliver. We call them zero touch, full, and hybrid. So with a zero touch workflow, sorry, beg your pardon, as long as the user creates and adheres to all of our validation rules set within the team form here, when they click create, that team will be created. So the basic checks, if it's not a duplicate, the team name is a minimum is of the right characters, they've got the minimum number of owners and members in there, they click create, it gets created. The full workflow means that regardless of who creates a team, how much data or what rules they've adhered to, even if they've adhered to all of the data validation rules in that form, it still needs to be approved by somebody. And in that scenario, the user would always get this submit for authorization button, and they were at the bottom. And when they click that, an email will be sent to a list of people or an email address or a service desk queue that will then get an email like this with 2 embedded URLs in it. And then it will give the details of the team. So Tom wants to create this team. These are the details. Do you approve? And then the approver can either click approve or decline based on whether it should be created. Once they do that, that will then trigger the graph work to go and create the team for the user. So from the IT administrator side, there's no PowerShell stuff required for this. You don't have to go to any admin portal for it. You just click on approve. That then will create the team as if the user had clicked create. And a hybrid model is a halfway house between the two. So we can set within CreateTeam a minimum and then a best practice. So where the field is set to amber, this means that whilst technically you can create a team with one user, one owner, we recommend you have at least 2. So as long as you leave 1 in there, it will always go to submit for authorization because you're not adhering to our best practices. If you do have 2 owners in there and all the other fields are completed, then this button will appear as create. So what we're trying to do with the hybrid model is as many teams as possible, create them, and if people adhere to the rules, we will go and create those teams automatically. But if not, and they need approving, then we would send the email for them to be approved by people. So it's trying to find somewhere in the middle to worry about the teams that we need to worry about, rather than having everything go through or everything just be approved automatically. The guest access setting here is something that we allow you within CreateTeam to whitelist a group of users who will be able to create teams that can contain guests. So guest users in teams are users from outside of your company that can be added to teams as if they were part of your organization. Again, the native setting for this is either on or off. But what we allow you to do is to identify a subset of users within your organization, whitelist them in your Active Directory, or create an Active Directory group, for them. And then within CreateTeam, they will be the only people who have it that can have the allow guests button appear. So again, from the control point of view, it gives you confidence that only the people that you trust and that you want to give that ability to will be allowed to create teams that can contain guest users. And they then, if they want that functionality, they would tick that allow guest box. That means then that team can contain users from outside of your organization. So those are some of the key features we look at in terms we're using at the moment to control the security and governance within Teams. These are some of the roadmap features that are coming down the line very soon after this, based on conversations we're having with people. So Teams templates is one. We've had a lot of requests to make the approval workflow more intelligent, which we're working on. Which and to give you an idea that if it is a team that deals with highly sensitive information and classified information, that needs to be approved by multiple people before it can be created. We're looking at a guest domain whitelist again. So if you have specific customers that you work with, that people are certified to have guests from, then only guests from those domains can be added to a team. And then again, prompting the user for more questions about the team. So validating what type of data will this contain, and almost a disclaimer like tick box to say this will not contain this sort of data, but those will be customized for your language, your use cases, and however you'd like to use them. And then as part of the templates, we're looking at the data sensitivity and retention labels and settings within Teams. So I know some of that is coming within Teams, and we're doing a big piece of work with Modality around our security proposal, where we look at that within Office 365, but we're feeding that directly into our Teams functionality. Sorry, our CreateTeam functionality, I beg your pardon. And then the final two bits, which we need to do, which again are work in progress at the moment, so should be delivered, I'm hoping, in the next couple of weeks, are the idea that it's a true single sign-on. So at the moment, when you log into CreateTeam, you have to enter your Office 365 password, because we authenticate through Office 365 to get all the graph details. So we're going to introduce true single sign-on, so there'll be no password required for the user. And also we're finalizing and making slicker our model to install in a customer tenant, so that it would be a something like an ARM template, where it would be very simple to deploy in Azure, and really make that experience as quick and easy as it is to install based on our hosted service. So the last bit from me, just before taking some questions, I just wanted to give an example of where we use CreateTeam in a real world example as to how it can add value to a much wider use case. So when looking at something like the idea to ensure that teams deliver least privileged access to sensitive data, then that is something that least privilege access is something that ISO certifications work towards, where it means that you only allow access to this data to the minimum amount of people within your organization. So it's not publicly available, it's stored securely, and only the people that have an operational need to see it can see that information. So within CreateTeam, the way that you could apply CreateTeam, and we're talking with customers about this use case, is where you give people a specific template that's relevant to their job role, that has all of those settings and security policies in there. That means that they can only create teams using those assigned templates. And then those templates have got the least privilege access, the settings in there, and based on your policies that you set, that will ensure those are in place for those teams being created. And another feature that we're looking at, I forgot to put on the roadmap earlier, sorry, is adding in a naming prefix and suffix for teams, so that when it comes to organizing them and searching for them, you know that if a team was created using a specific template, it would have a naming suffix in there, so that you know that template, that team is an IT team, or that team is a project management team, or so on and so forth. So that was everything I was going to talk through today. I'm just going to check and see if there are any questions to field. There was one that came in around controlling the external sharing at the time of creation with Graph. So when we talk about the external sharing, sorry, I'm guessing you're talking about the guest users in there. So we do control that at the time of creation, but it's based on the setting assigned to the user who's creating it. So if that user is able to create teams that can contain guest users, then yes, that's set at the creation. But in terms of the sharing of documents and everything, when that feature lands within sensitivity and the retention labels, then again, yes, all of the settings that we set within CreateTeam are set when the team is created. So the underlying SharePoint site and any of the permissions associated with that, or the 365 group that gets created, all of that is set and created at the time of creation, when CreateTeam goes off the graph to do its thing. Okay, so I think there's no further questions come in from this. So we do offer a free trial of CreateTeam from our hosted service. So following this email, following this webinar, there'll be an email coming out containing details of that, and then there'll be a copy of these slides available as well. But the last thing from me is just to say thank you again so much for your time this morning. I hope it was useful. And again, if anyone thinks of any further questions or wants to know more, then please reach out to us at Modality. So I'll be happy to help you with this. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.